Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we've got actor Dave Foley and award-winning filmmaker Dean Alito. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, now I got to tell you, when this came across my desk yesterday and I saw it promoting the alien perspective, an eye-open documentary, and I was like going, I love aliens, especially since our government don't call them aliens anymore. We call it, what's it called right now? Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yes, yeah. Or actually now they've modified that to unidentified anomalous phenomena. because these things they've been seen going in and out of the water and coming in from space. So
yeah, we will buy anything. I think the government tells us, oh no, we don't have UFOs. We have this new thing.
Yeah,
but a rose by any other name is still a rose.
Yeah, and we got to remember that the UFO was a term invented by the military back in the early 50s because they didn't want to have to say flying saucer, so they came up with UFO to make it seem more serious, and now they've switched to a UAP for exactly the same reason, just to try and take away some of the stigma.
I love how accepted we are now. Now we just go, Congress is having hearings. It's not a big deal. Millions of dollars spent on hearings, and we're good with it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you got. It's the only thing that the Republicans and the Democrats agree on. Is that the UFO issue is serious and that we got to figure it out. And it's the only thing where we're getting unanimous bipartisan legislation is being written about UFOs and nothing else.
It's amazing how we just kind of sneak this one in and we're going, like everything's wasn't the way it used to be. But why don't you tell me about the documentary a little bit?
The documentary is a 7 years in the making journey, 66 interviews over 4 countries. It started out being just a science documentary that was going to be looking at this subject for the first time in a kind of a premium higher level production, but also looking at it from any possibility and not saying that we're going to, ascribe to one theory. So we start at NASA, and then we end up at Oxford looking at all the different possible theories and modalities. And, where once it was only one flavor of ice cream, now it's Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. I mean, are they from the future, another dimension? Are they, did they create us? So we look at all of these possible theories and tie them in, and we have people who are talking about this who are experts in fields that are relatable, like Michael Masters, Dr. Michael Masters out of Montana Tech, who believes that we're evolving to look like these things. That's fascinating. So we spend time in that. And then in order to kind of convey this and to be able to have it be something that people can visualize, because like this Tic Tac footage of the Navy event that happened, incident, it's kind of hard to conceptualize from black and white FLIR footage of this object moving back and forth. So we brought in a world-class animator to come in and actually animate that. So you're in the cockpit as he's seeing this craft, et cetera. So, yeah, it's been this thing that's been dragging me along more than I've been leading the charge. It's just fascinating and continues going on and on.
Now, what I love about this is, since you've been doing this for 7 years, so in the middle of this documentary, you're doing this stuff. Some of your friends are going, do you believe? Do you not believe? And then you get notified that Congress is having hearings. How that must just blown your mind going, wow, this is actually happening.
Well, I went to my high school reunion and I had some people come up to me and go, so you're into UFOs, huh? Which is always a funny way to phrase that. And then they want to know, they say, okay, so what do you really know? So it's no longer, you really believe in this, which I used to get before. Now it's like, so what's really going on? As if I know. I mean, I know a little bit more than maybe your average person, but which we try to incorporate into the documentary. But I think ultimately it feels like we're being kind of primed, without trying conspiratory, but here, trying to sound conspiratory. It feels like something is leading to something where the acceptance, when the Navy comes out and says, yes, this is not from our planet, our known, it's not us, not our foes. That is a paradigm shift that's kind of staggering. And then when you've got the U.S. Senate and the House, Congress coming out and talking about this, and like Dave says, it's both sides. We're agreeing on this, and so I'm curious, like you. I've got my popcorn ready, and I've buckled up for the next chapter and what's coming.
Mm-hmm. Now here's the hard part. Tomorrow we're all sitting around, and suddenly the first spaceship, or whatever we want to call it, lands in the middle of D.C. It says, "Hey guys, let's talk about what's going on." Our universe, our world, our everything shifts in a second.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of part of what's happening is the avoidance of that shift in a second. I mean, there's a thing a lot of people in the military. A guy named Carl Nell has done a lot of talking. Is a retired intelligence officer about something they call catastrophic disclosure, and that is that notion that either another nation just spills everything all out at once, and people have to absorb it in one day, or that the non-human intelligence themselves put everything out all in one day. And and one of the things that is being discussed is how do we do a controlled disclosure of what the government already knows, and and that people can absorb gradually. And it seems like we're in the middle of that process right now. That we're getting bits and bits and bits, and people are taking it more and more seriously and are more acclimatized to it. I mean, I've seen a shift in the last 5 years of less and less X-Files theme being played on news segments, less and less giggling. I know even when I'm talking to people I meet, less and less glazing over of the eyes. It used to be I'd meet people and they'd say, "So yeah, I get that. So you're into UFOs?" I said, "Yeah, well, they're real." And then people go, "Uh-huh," and you could see them stop listening. You could actually, it's almost like you could see their ears disappear. So in the last 5 years, we are getting acclimatized. We are getting ready for it, and it's because these things have been going on for a long time. I mean, the Capitol building was swarmed by UFOs in 1952, and it was a huge news story back then. And most people aren't aware of that now. But it was the cover of all the newspapers. It was on Life magazine. So this, we're getting ready, I think, as a culture to confront whatever this is.
Now, Dave,
and as an example of that, Dave Foley has got a great podcast that he does called Really? And he and Tom Wheeler, it's interesting because they're able to pull all of these great people who normally wouldn't, come out of the closet to talk about this, researchers and scientists and stuff. And so it's a topic that wants to be discussed, and its time is here. And all the polls show that we're ready for that. The majority of people polled believe that that we are being visited. And they also believe that the government, a huge chunk of that also believes that the government is covering things up. So I think we can handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. That's gone. We can do it.
And I think, and every intelligent person I know who actually takes the time to look at the data, to look at the history, winds up kind of dedicating a lot of their life to thinking about the subject, and winds up taking it very seriously. And the only way to not take this seriously is to not look at the data. And I think more and more people are making the decision to pay attention, which I think is great.
Now, Dave, I'm an attorney. I'm a comic writer. I do stand-up. Every once in a while, I do something, and I'm certain that my agency or my talent, an agent's going to say to me, "Hey, Jeff, you got to lay off the UFO stuff." I mean, I can't imagine the crap you've taken from your talent agency who just goes, "Dave, the alien stuff, we're trying to get you for this part, but they're a little bothered over the alien stuff."
Oh, a few years ago, I remember saying to them, "I'd like to do a podcast about UFOs." And that's good, but maybe we should focus on a subject that, that is more marketable, more, maybe, something, maybe just a watching podcast about comedy. and that has transitioned to, in the last couple of years, my representatives using the phrase, there's a lot of interest in the UFO space right now.
The UFO
So
space. I love that.
Yeah. So now, because now there's the industry is now tuning into it, the entertainment industry, and it's definitely it's not the same. As I said, my own representatives who know I'm not crazy would just sort of and then move on to another subject, But now they're going, well, there's something to this, and by that they mean there's money in this,
Yeah. Money will follow. Now, the greatest thing I love about this is, about 20 years ago, anybody who talked about UFOs would say it'd be some guy in a trailer. Now you're talking to scientists. You're talking to politicians. I mean, the change of these interviews must just be mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, Dean.
Yeah. It is the kind of caliber of people, not anything against people that live in a trailer or a trailer park, but the caliber of people who are willing to talk about this and who have thought about this, more importantly, and pondered it. Everyone's got their own perspective, right? And so that to me is fascinating because, again, getting to do these interviews, it becomes this jousting thing because for me, I really want to believe in this stuff, and it seems to make sense, logical sense, statistically as well. But I'm not an easy date. So I'm not going to, excuse the crudeness, put out on the first date. I want to get to know and feel like, this truth is being honest about itself. And so it's really something that I feel it's kind of a big puzzle, and we're all trying to bring our pieces in, and we're all kind of collecting them. But whereas a puzzle, has its pieces where you can go, oh, that image looks like the corner of this picture that we're putting together. It's kind of like the White Album. Every piece is white, and you just kind of have to get it in place. And then when you're done, it'll present what it is. So part of the fun of this is the journey of discovering this, because really what we're trying to do, guys, is we're trying to look at this like it's a trailer to an upcoming movie. And so you don't want to give too much away, too many spoilers, but you want enough that you go, okay, there is something that's going to be amazing coming. And it feels like that is happening, starting to happen, even if it's a paradigm shift in the mentality of how we look at this, and we fold this into, oh, this is now part of nature, just like the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
What's interesting? Sorry.
What? Oh, no, I was just saying. You go on.
What I think it's so difficult for people to get, because there's a difference between knowing that people might be watching us, and then you have the people who believe that they're actually taking some people, for experiments. I mean, that must just be a night and day issue.
Yeah, well, and the fact that the abduction phenomena encompasses potentially millions of people who've had these experiences is pretty phenomenal. And the consistency of the stories, and the and the fact that most of the people who have had these experiences, by all other measures, seem perfectly sane and rational. So that's something that has to be taken seriously. We did have the head of Harvard psychiatry, John Mack, for a long time was, out there alone, studying it and taking it seriously and saying, well, I have no reason to think these people are crazy. And that's my job, is to know if people are crazy. And, and now you have the head of Harvard astronomy, Avi Loeb is studying this. You've got Gary Nolan, one of the world's leading molecular biologists, is studying this subject. And people are taking it very seriously. Michio Kaku, it's one of the leading proponents of string theory, is on board, taking this seriously. You can't dismiss all of these people,
Now, when we're talking about a lot of these people, like the high educators, they need grants, they need money. They can't just be sitting around going, okay, I'll get my car and somebody's paying for the gas for me to drive to Arizona. So is there money out there now paying for these grants for them to study?
Not through the traditional networks, right, Dean?
Yeah, no. No one wants to fund people going to Arizona for some reason. But no, it's you don't make a living pursuing UFOs. You just don't. If you have a show, TV series or something, then sure. But most of these people are doing this bootstrapped on their own. These are people who are, in a way, detectives, researchers that are doing this, that disseminate this, and those people are boots on the ground, soldiers in this.
And they're jeopardizing their funding really by taking on this subject. A lot of them.
Yeah, but as an example where things have changed is again Michael Masters, Professor Michael Masters in Montana Tech. He told his board, his bosses at Montana Tech, said, "Hey, look, I am going to be publishing a book on this, and I'll probably be doing some tours. How do you feel about this? And I might even want to do a class." And they said, "Right on." That wouldn't have happened even 6 years ago.
No,
yeah,
10 years ago.
I was saying, you go back to John Mack. John Mack, Harvard did their best to destroy his career because he was taking the UFO abductions phenomenon seriously.
Yeah, he went on Oprah and all these shows, and when he was done with that tour of his book, Harvard literally tried to take his license away, not just remove him from Harvard faculty. It was a old-fashioned witch hunt that was done in the 90s.
He had to hire lawyers and fight it, and
then all these other professors came to his aid because they're kind of like, well, we can study in colleges, angels and religions and stuff, and there's not any more evidence in that than there is in the UFO space. How do you justify that? And so,
yeah. How do you have a theology department at Harvard, but you can't study UFOs?
Yeah. Go figure.
It seems, there's a lot of risk to this. People who've been highly educated, who've spent a long time doing this. Now, I mentioned earlier if your agents have ever said anything to you, but what do you think the toughest conversation you've had with a professional about maybe losing a relationship or possibly losing a gig over your feelings about UFOs?
Well, it's never been that upfront. It's, as I said, it's always just more the eyes glaze over and they just stop listening and they move on to another subject. And again, that is happening less and less often. I think when I first started talking about it, I was aware that I could get branded as a UFO nut, but I kind of just didn't care. I thought. My attitude was too many people, the stigma around this subject has ruined too many lives. And I'm in a position where I have a little bit of a platform. I can maybe make those people's lives a little better by talking about it, making it, doing my little bit to reduce the stigma, which I think, Dean is also doing in his work. And I think it's, that's part of the incentive behind it, is to try and reduce the damage that this subject matter does to people's lives.
I'm also curious, Dave, when you did go public, did that bring a different level of connectivity to people that you would have to seek out beforehand? They're now coming to you, so you've got a greater pool of minds of people that talk about this?
Oh yeah, it's like people in the industry, people, and just people on social media reaching out to me to tell me their stories and tell me what their experiences are, was phenomenal and a gift. But it also, so many people within the entertainment industry started coming up to me and telling me their stories. Most of them still won't talk about them publicly, but a lot more are, talking about it. And I had a friend of mine on the podcast who I'd known for over 30 years and didn't know that she was a part of the Hudson Valley UFO incident back in the 80s. And it wasn't only when I started doing the podcast that she said, well, I saw something. And she was part of the famous Hudson Valley flat when she was a teenager, and was traumatized by it.
Now you've taken a lot of risks in your career. I mean, you left school to become stand up. We've gone from Second City TV. You've done all these things. I can't imagine you going, I love this topic so much that it's worth the risk that I'm right about to take.
Yeah, well, I think it's more just that attitude of I've always been willing to upset people. I mean, back when we were doing Kids in the Hall, our attitude was just always we're going to just do whatever we think is interesting and funny, and we never really paid attention to if it was upsetting anybody. And so it's the same thing. I always approach things of, well, if I think something's interesting or true, then that's what I'm going to talk about.
But it's also interesting because good comedy is controversial, right?
The stuff I like, yeah.
So it makes sense that, the next level is this topic, which is equally controversial.
Yeah. And it's always in my nature that if someone tells me there's something that you shouldn't talk about, then that's the thing I'm going to talk about.
I wonder, could you mention something about, the information being able to get out there? Now that we have the internet, the minute something happens big, I mean, clearly big, it's going to be everywhere. Now, I know there are certain countries that are going to implode the minute we discover there are aliens.
Possibly. I don't. It's one of those things where you go back to the Catholic Church's attitude towards Galileo seeing moons around other planets, and that was the end of the world. If that gets out, humanity will fall apart. And maybe they were right. Maybe the Catholics were right. Maybe if it had happened then, maybe the world would have fallen apart. But the fact is, we've managed to survive knowing that we aren't the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And human beings seem very adaptable to new situations.
Furthermore, the Vatican actually has an extraterrestrial program.
Yeah.
Seriously, they've been studying the stars. They've got like two or three very high-powered telescopes that they've had for decades. So they want to be out in the front should this, go down the pike. And so this isn't just, for, these, closeted astronomers and stuff at Harvard. This is something that's been considered and has for a very long time. And, they have a huge archive of historical accounts of UFOs at the Vatican. An incredible record database that they have that, like, here's another scientist, Dr. Dinah Pasulka, religious studies. She was the first woman to go to the what has been called the secret Vatican. It's not very secret, libraries, and to go there and to see firsthand accounts of what was perceived as miracles that actually look very similar to encounters with beings from another planet. So it's been with us a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I can't tell you. I could talk about this all day, but I know you guys have a life. Why don't you tell me when the show's coming out?
Sure. It is coming out January 8th, and it'll be on Amazon and Apple TV. And it'll be in several different countries as well, so it's a wide release.
Well, I appreciate you guys making the time. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.